fellow travelers, welcome to the 114th level of the RPG Cave. I am one of your hosts, the level 199 Dark Lord Ryan Turford, and I am joined, as always, by the level 99 Battle Alchemist, Dr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing on this lovely, lovely Monday evening? We're back, even though
we're back.
I guess we didn't really go anywhere because we
No.
just have a normal show last week. But
yeah, we just had a normal show. I have two facts for you today, Ryan. They're non-weather related, so
okay,
I'm gonna lay it out there.
I'm interested.
So earlier I went to Whole Foods. You know, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Right.
Went to Whole Foods, and I was just getting directions or whatever to the Whole Foods place that's nearby. And what I noticed, zooming in, like in Whole Foods, just see what's around the area. The building right next to it is Discord headquarters. I'm not even kidding. Yeah, I was just like, oh, okay, that's where they are. And they have all these tech companies kind of like meandered around this area, and they're like kind of just there. They kind of just it's just this random warehouse type of looking building that actually is filled with offices and computers in it. Oh yeah, it houses one of the biggest gaming chat network out there now.
Is that why Discord went down today, Garret? Because Discord went down earlier today, and was it because you walked by the Discord office? It broke everything. They just couldn't power the panel. The power of the Bland explosion.
I probably went full Watch Dogs 2 and hacked into everything.
Of course.
Went to the sneak by the Discord headquarters. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. But my second fact of the day is, Ryan, I'm back on the 2DS XL. I've been playing some Mario and Luigi, but I've also joined up PSVG Lunch Club for Mario Golf. That's right, Mario Golf. We only have online for like, I don't know, a few more months or something like that.
Yeah, it's coming to soon, very soon. So
yeah, so Donnie, in doing his last hurrah with his Lunch Club. If anyone doesn't know, Mario Golf on 3DS is probably the best Mario Golf game out there now. It's at least one of the for like the most modern takes. It's certainly better than the Switch Mario Golf game.
That's an understatement, Garret.
Yes, yeah. So I had so much fun. Just like you can literally just join in the tournament, have a tournament code, look it up on Nintendo Shack on Twitter or Discord or whatever. The code's there, and then just compete with me and Donnie and Winter Gamer and all the other peeps there going.
That's awesome. Yeah, like I saw Donnie post the code over the weekend, but I just hadn't had a chance to jump in yet. So definitely, folks, head on over to the Nintendo Shack. In fact, if you're not following the Nintendo Shack already, what are you doing?
Do it.
You follow the Nintendo Shack on Twitter. Yes, they're not an RPG show, Garret, but they talk about RPGs sometimes.
I don't know how much they talk about those games anymore.
That's true, because actually now that you're not there, it's I mean, Devin doesn't really play a lot of RPGs. Donnie certainly doesn't. Like it's Rebecca by herself, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And she plays like, the Sea of Stars and Super Mario RPG probably, but that's like her extent, She doesn't really get into like open world action RPGs or Fire Emblem or anything like that.
We're not asking her for the takes on the Trail series at this point.
No, we're not. I would. She'd be like, "What? Huh? What?
Yeah,
never heard of it."
That's all good. It's all good. Well, I know she listens to the show, so shout out to Rebecca, by the way.
Shout out.
But anyways, Garret, speaking of that, first of all, thank you for the fun facts, by the way. I appreciate it. As someone who always gives out the fun facts, I do always love receiving the fun facts in return, Garret. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome.
But of course, we got to clean out the dungeon because, we got to get to that final boss at some point. Because, we're not going to he's not going to get defeated himself or anything like that. So, folks, if you're watching the show, write me out over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming. Or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and then let us know in the comments below what your dream RPG crossover is, or what you think about Star Ocean or anything else we talk about on tonight's show. We would love to hear from you. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to rate us. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, maybe leave us a nice Apple Podcast review, maybe leave some comments over on Spotify, or the main thing is, of course, hitting that subscribe button if you're listening on podcast feeds. Also, if you want one big podcast feed with the entire Carpool Gaming cinematic universe on it, head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming. And in fact, Garrett, this kind of leads us to the next thing that happened this weekend that you and I were not at, but we got to watch and be part of it the whole weekend with the community. Of course. Garrett, Extra Life happened this weekend in Rome, New York, even though it's technically Herkimer. Rome, New York is what we will refer to it as henceforth. But of course, just because game day is over, Garrett, that does not necessarily mean the work has stopped for us to, continue to raise money, as we'll obviously be continuing to take donations for the Stollery Children's Hospital Foundation until the end of the year. So if you haven't gotten your donation in and you want to get entered for the remaining prizes, because we do have some remaining prizes to be drawn. We've given away a lot of the main prizes here. We've already given away the keyboard. The Starfield controller that's behind me, we gave it away to Cwagmire, Garrett. And
nice.
Cwagmire is going to be here in Toronto on Saturday. So I'm actually going to be just giving him the controller on Saturday. So this will be the last time on the show.
That's super cool.
The Starfield controller will be in the background. Of course,
hope he plays Starfield with it.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't even have an Xbox at this point.
So. Oh, well, you can just keep it. It's okay. It's a very beautifully designed controller.
Yeah.
Sure. You can play on PC with it, of course.
Of course. And I know also, Garrett, we're working our way towards this $9,396 goal. And the reason why I bring that up in particular with this show, number one, that goal would make it so that we are at $1 over what we raised last year. But additionally, this unlocks, the Jar Jar 2023 shirt giveaway, which is awesome. Of course, people want to, hop in on that. Or, we're giving away some limited edition merch. But additionally, Garrett, we have a prize at this level that unlocks that is, very tantamount to this show in particular, because we will also be giving away a copy of Star Ocean, the Second Story R's Collector's Edition for the Nintendo Switch, if we reach this goal of $9,396. Currently, eBay prices for that Collector's Edition at this point, Garrett, over $700 at this point.
That is insane.
They made like 1,000 of them, and they sold out in 10 minutes. So
of course they did. It's not enough.
Right. And it's very pretty. It comes with like the soundtrack for Star Ocean. It also comes with the game itself, and then like a big art book and stuff like that. So that's a prize we will be giving away to one lucky winner, provided of course we meet that goal, because that is kind of the stipulation we got going on here. So cool. There you go. So obviously, again, if you haven't donated yet, please consider donating as well. Over on extra-life.org/participant/carpool gaming, all that good stuff.
I just one question for the collector's edition giveaway, whatever. Is it like $10 per entry still for
still $10 per entry. So Tony Baker's racked up a lot of entries for that prize, because he's our top donor at this point. But yes, I mean, every $10 gets you an entry into the contest. Cool. Thank you very much, Garrett, for clarifying that. And like I said, that goes until the end of the year. So if we hit that goal sometime between now and New Year's, that'll still count, and we'll be giving that prize away to one lucky winner. I will be very jealous whoever wins that, because we're going to talk about Star Ocean in a second, but I think that's going to be a really good prize for someone. But also, Garrett, I want to shout out, first of all, Sean, Seth, and Amanda for putting on an amazing show this weekend over in Extra Life. Staying up the full 25 hours. No one fell asleep this time. Not even TPR fell asleep this time, Garrett, if you can believe
that's crazy. Does he normally fall asleep?
He did the full 8 hours of sleep the year before, with a shower and everything. So,
wow.
Yeah.
You're living the dream there.
Of course. So obviously, everyone kind of ripped him a little bit. I felt bad for him a little bit, because we made fun of him a little bit too much. But no, so it was a really great time. Of course, we have that archived on our Twitch panel, or Twitch page. If you want to go check that out, twitch.tv/carpoolgaming_live. But additionally, Garrett, I wanted to shout out the fact that they actually did a D&D campaign, a one-shot D&D campaign, which we actually posted up on Patreon. So if you missed the live stream of it, which actually is still on YouTube, if you want to go check that out. The reason I wanted to bring that up here, Garrett, is because it is RPG Cave themed in a way, where it's, even though it's a D&D campaign, our characters are weaved into the story.
It definitely is.
as well as the RPG cave is a physical place they visit. So,
and I just want to shout out Seth for the amazing campaign he made for this. Like, just encompassing the RPG cave and carpool gaming lore, the very deep into this game. So if you are a carpool gaming fanatic, you definitely need to watch or listen to this. It's full of fun, and of course some great players with it too. Sean and Amanda, it was all around great fun watching it. Yeah.
So the audio is up on Patreon, but you can go watch the video version. In fact, I would actually encourage y'all to actually watch the video version instead, because you get to see everyone in person, and that's a truly special thing. We just don't get to do that all that often. In fact, Garrett, you and I still have not met in person at this point.
I know.
We're still waiting for that magical moment where we'll be able to, make the trip to Kroger or HEB together and maybe go pick up some.
Oh my gosh, are we gonna meet up in Texas?
Yeah, I mean, clearly they've got the best grocery stores, Garrett. What can I say?
Man, HEB. Let me just, I just want to shout out HEB in this. Yeah. I hope we get sponsored by them, to be honest with you, because they have the best prices, best groceries of any grocery store I've ever been to. And I've been to Pennsylvania with those giant eagle bull crap, whatever that is. I don't even know. You can't even sell alcohol in grocery stores in the state of Pennsylvania.
I mean, you couldn't do that in Canada until like last year.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because we had a company, a government-run company called the Beer Store, Garrett, and that was the only store in Ontario you could legally buy beer from.
Interesting.
Was the beer store.
Yeah, when I grew up in Texas, it was soft. It was, like soft liquor, like beers and wines and stuff you can sell at grocery stores, and then liquors at a separate store. And then that kind of law just fade away. You can put some hard liquor in there. California, of course, the most libertarian, most progressive of them all. You just throw all the alcohol in there. But man, in Pennsylvania, it's just like, no, you're gonna have to go straight across the street, and you're gonna have to pay the certain amount of tax above, and it's kind of crazy. Well, because Trader Joe's, the place I go to a lot, other than Costco, they sell good beer, cheap beer, and cheap wine, and you can't do that in Pennsylvania. Because then they just give up. They're just like, no, I guess we can't sell it here. Kind of sucks there. So
that sucks.
Anyways,
but yes, back to HEB, Garrett. We'll go there. We'll buy a tub of Bluebell ice cream, and
oh my gosh, you speaking my language.
That's what I mean. Trust me, I know, Garrett. I know.
Bluebell.
Yes,
best ice cream.
But also huge shout to the entire team behind the scenes. For their work for Extra Life, as well as everyone for coming. Again, it was a great event, and hopefully, Garrett, hopefully next year, both of us can find a way to be there next year. Hopefully,
that would be cool.
Hopefully,
we'll
cool. See. But there you go. That's all the things I wanted to shout out. So let's go on an RPG side quest, Garrett, because before we get into the main topic, originally this week I had meant for this episode to be kind of a review discussion for Star Ocean, the second story R. That didn't happen. I'm still planning on trying to do that for next week. So stay tuned for that. That's what I'm looking at. But I want to give my quick thoughts, Garrett, because I played it over a lot this week. In fact, huge thank you to Square Enix for providing a code for Star Ocean, the second story R. This game, Garrett, was very fun. Like, it was a game I was already looking forward to coming into it, and after playing the demo, which I really enjoyed. And I, especially knowing the PlayStation 1 game and how good the PlayStation 1 version of Star Ocean, the second story is. But man, they nailed it with this remastered so much. Like, you can definitely see it in the reviews that are out there as well. But I love the combat system is very fun. It feels very much like the Tales series in a lot of ways, where it's got that very fast-paced action RPG combat. Of course, the characters are well written and well voiced. The world is really beautiful to explore, and I love kind of the art style, because it's not HD 2D, but it's trying to emulate the look of the original game. So it almost feels like you're playing like a 3D Super Nintendo RPG.
Well, it's 3D assets in the background, and then it's 2D like pixel art for the characters. Yes. Like, literally. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, it feels like it really felt like playing like a very old role-playing game in all the best ways. Like, all the ways that I really enjoyed. Of course, it's got some great music. and great visuals. So yeah, I highly recommend Star Ocean: The Second Story R for those that are on the fence. Definitely try the demo, because I think the demo will give you a good gauge as to whether or not you'll actually probably enjoy this game. But like, I could not put this game down, Garrett, from the time, you know, I had access to it to the time I finished it. I was like, I had a million other games I could be playing, but all I was playing was this because I couldn't stop playing it. Like, that's how much I enjoyed it. So
you gotta love, you know, that type of you know, not obsession, but just like what you're really into it. Like once you get into a new game and you're just like, man, I can't stop thinking about it. I just want to, you know, keep on going with it. And I'm glad you had such a good time. Especially this is a, you know, slightly nostalgic for you too, because you played the original one, right, as well. And you're
and
a big
also
Star Ocean fan.
I don't know if you knew this, Garrett, but you can actually enable the original soundtrack in this game as well if you don't like the arranged version. So you can have an even more nostalgic experience by using like the PS1 soundtrack, which actually still slaps. It's actually still a really good soundtrack, which is one of the reasons why they included it actually in the collector's edition, because you have the soundtracks for both the arranged versions and the classic versions in that collector's edition. But yeah, like it was really fun to go back to, because like I'd played the second story, you know, fairly recently, like a couple years ago for the first time, and really enjoyed my playthrough there. Like it's not super, like it's not nostalgic enough because I didn't play it in the PS1 era, but it was nostalgic to go back to it because I hadn't replayed that game since I played it for the first time, and it still just really holds up. And they did some interesting additions with this version, so it's not exactly the same. But all the additions that they added to it are really good. Especially like there's some end game stuff to the game that's really interesting. Like there's some late game dungeons. Like there was an infinitely difficult late game dungeon in the original version of the game, but they added even more content to this version, which was really cool. They even have little nostalgic things like the character portraits in like the status menu. You have like the brand new, you know, hand-drawn versions of each character. But if you want to be really nostalgic, you'd actually switch to the PS1 Star Ocean character designs, or the PSP version character designs, which we didn't get here in North America because that was Japan only and Europe.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So is it only this version? There's no like, here's a classic version of the game at all?
There's no classic version of the game. It's only this version. But honestly, I don't think you after this, like this remake is so good, honestly don't know if you even need to go back to the original version at this point, unless you want to play it for game preservation needs. Like
I totally understand. I recently played that Atelier remake of the first one, and I went through it and it was fun, and I think it was fun, like the newest version of it, and it was kind of revamped, similar to the second story art for sure. It's like 3D assets now, and you know it's a very, you know, just a chill game. And then they had the, like, if you get the deluxe edition, you can get the classic version of it, which I think I forgot which system it was. It was Sega Saturn or something like that. People will correct me on that. But it was very hard to go through that one. And they had they didn't, you know, it was literally like an emulated port. So whatever the flaws were within that game, like you could see pixels streaking.
Well, especially Sega Saturn emulation is not great to begin with. So it's one of the reasons why, like, I really hope like a company like Analog comes along and makes an FPGA Sega Saturn console, because that's the only way we're going to get like a brand new
that would be
Sega
true
Saturn console.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm gonna bring Yarden's question real quick. Yarden says, or Jarden, as the kids might say, says, settle this: is Star Ocean prettier than Sea of Stars, Donnie versus Rebecca? So I on one hand, I would say that Sea of Stars might be the prettier of the two games because it is fully in the 2D style versus Star Ocean. But I don't know. I really like the look of like the spell effects and everything else. Like the backgrounds, like the locations look really good in Star Ocean. The character designs are great. So like, I don't know. That's like a tough call. Like
it's hard to compare those.
Yeah, it's more like, what do you prefer? Like 2D character sprites with 3D visuals, or do you just prefer like standard 2D fare?
Yeah, I would say Octopath Traveler and Second Story R and Sea of Stars are like apple, oranges, and bananas. They're like, they kind of look the same, but they really are very different in distinct ways. Octopath Traveler 2 is 2D pixel art in a 3D space with some shading, some particle effects. It looks brilliant. I think it looks beautiful. Sea of Stars really hits that 2D pixel art style. Even the palettes, the color palettes, and the art design and the direction of the game and the animations, top notch. Like, you don't see that very often at all. So the 2D pixel art is good, and then Second Story art, it looks great. Yeah, I wouldn't, I don't know, like, I wouldn't say anything bad or complain anything about like the look of that game.
Yeah, like I think it just comes down to stylistic choice more than anything. Like, what do you prefer, like visually?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So I'll talk about that more next week. But I wanted to make sure to get that in here because I just finished the game earlier this week, Garrett, and
cool.
Yeah, that game is awesome. Like
I played
very
about
excited
an
for more
hour.
people to play it.
Yeah, I played an hour of the demo, and I want to go back and kind of just like finish out the demo.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to wait till I'm ready to get it, because I want to be a little bit more fresh on my mind with it before I really dive into it. So, but it was fun from what I played. Yeah.
And also I'll throw it out there as well that, for people that are playing this for the first time, your choices do matter because who you recruit, sometimes like you can't actually recruit every party member in one playthrough. So you have to like pick and choose who you accept into your party and who you don't, and that like makes a big difference on the gameplay. So you have to like be very mindful of like who you bring in, because sometimes you might bring in the wrong party makeup, and your combat later in the game will be really difficult. So that's kind of my one tip for new beginners is like, don't always accept every person in your party who wants to join your party. Like, think about like because you get a chance to play with each character first before you decide to recruit them. So make sure that they kind of fit in your party first before you actually let them join.
But, sounds good.
You go. But Garrett, it is now time for us to read from the sacred texts, because it's finally time to get to our main topic 23 minutes into the episode. In fact, Yarden or Hoppel or whoever wants to timestamp it, this is the timestamp moment. This is when we get to the actual topic at hand. So I was inspired a little bit, Garrett, because I wanted to do something fun this week and a little bit different. I was inspired, of course, by seeing Project Cross Zone on my shelf, because Project Cross Zone, one of the biggest crossovers in any video game known to man. Of course,
and no one knows about it. No one has ever heard of it. I haven't even heard
classic game that had three games if you count Namco Cross Bandai as well, because that's like the precursor to those games. But those games cross over Sega, Bandai Namco, and Capcom in like the goofiest way possible. So I was inspired by that, because I was like, you know what, we don't get enough RPG crossovers, Garrett. Like, we don't get enough series that
I agree.
Cross over with each other, partially because it's a licensing nightmare from what I imagine. But like, I don't know, this is an idea that I would love to see more of. So we decided to each bring two like our own RPG crossover idea to the table, and we're going to talk it out. We're going to talk about, how these games would actually be developed, what they would actually look like, and all the pertinent information you need to know to, the dev docs, Garrett. We want to create the dev docs so these get willed into existence. That's kind of the idea I want to come up with tonight. So we're gonna have some fun. Oh. So Garrett, would you like me to go first, or would you like to go first with your pitch?
I want to go first. How about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because we'll do these one at a time, because we're gonna go fairly in depth with it. Like, that's why we only brought one each, in case y'all are wondering. Although I have an honorable mention one that's like so easy to kind of put together that I didn't even bother because it was too easy. So
sounds good. I also have like an honorable mention too, but we can go to that later.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll talk about that later.
So, thank you for bringing this topic up. I think it was a really interesting project or thought process to do within my own head as well. What would I do if I hold the power of my favorite RPGs and just kind of morph them together. So here's the title of this game: Fire Emblem.
Okay.
The Wandering Alchemist and the Hidden Nation.
Oh my god. It's a Atelier Fire Emblem, because of course it is.
Heck yeah. So we're going to cross over the awesome. And you know what? Before I really get into it, I find it very plausible this could happen.
Yeah.
Like out of all Western RPGs don't really cross over, they don't really talk to each other too much.
Yeah.
I find if any crossover would happen, it's really Japanese developers, because they're really a tight-knit community over there. And
if you see like a Western one, it'd be like somehow Fallout and Elder Scrolls wound up, bound together in some way, or like Mass Effect in another similar franchise. But you're right, like Western RPGs, like just conceiving these is a little bit more difficult. So because I think you and I both brought Japanese role-playing crossovers, because it's just easier to gem together, and honestly there's just more of them, so it's just
there's more of them. And like you know how these crossovers came to be, and it's like it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense completely at the same time, and the characters are talking to each other, just like Persona Q series. They just like, hey, we're just talking together now, we just jumped in portals and meet together, and it makes sense. So this is how this game's definitely going to be. So it's going to be. So again, repeat the title: Fire Emblem, The Wandering Alchemist and the Hidden Nation. Of course, that is a Atelier. This is Atelier Ryza series / Fire Emblem, New Fire Emblem crossover. Like that's gonna be kind of the layout. It's gonna be developed by, or co-developed. I would say co-developed, Intelligent Systems and Team Dust. Gust. Or something like
Team Guts.
And then it'll be released on 2025 on the Switch 2 exclusively, of course, because with Fire Emblem. Okay, so I'm gonna go through a little bit of the story first of this game, and I'm gonna go really in depth with the mechanics. And I think I want to bring like the best parts of Fire Emblem, and like that's gonna be the main foundation, and then for me, there are some weak points in the Fire Emblem game that I think the Atelier series really comes in and really enhances those weak points, kind of covers them up and makes them really, really shine. So the story is about, okay, you got a typical line of Fire Emblem characters. They're royalty, they're princes and kings and factions and nations, whatever. You got like 2 or 3 of them. But they soon, they have their own diplomacy. It's like, Game of Thrones or whatever. There is an existential threat to them and their livelihood, like all of them together. In the beginning of the game, a hidden nation, which they've never seen before, revealed themselves, and basically has this kind of this advantage against them. They have like enhanced abilities with their soldiers and their army because they discovered alchemy. They themselves are like, hey, you guys oppressed us centuries ago. We are back, and we're gonna now take over this world and give us the respect we deserve. So you got this hidden nation. They're coming in and they're attacking everyone, and they're just getting destroyed because alchemy is like really a man advantage over just regular soldiers in the Fire Emblem kind of lore or whatever, because they just do swords and bows, and that's pretty much it. The main characters have some maybe magic abilities, maybe related to beasts, but that's pretty much it. They don't get really too much into the magic, too much into the enchantments or anything like that, so that's kind of like the biggest like the first part of the story. You got a time jump, of course, because all great Fire Emblem games have a time jump,
because of course they do. You got to have children somehow.
We may not have children on this one, but we can if we want. So all the current Fire Emblem nations or whatever are in complete disarray. Here comes in Ryza and her team. They kind of like, I don't know how to introduce them in. They must have gone through a portal or what. They explain themselves out. Okay.
Maybe the nation that appears, the alchemy nation, maybe they live there. Like maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're on the journey and they happen to, go to get to this nation somehow, Garret, and like that's how they get wrapped into this adventure, because the Fire Emblem people just can't stand up to the alchemy soldiers, so they need to find locals to help them maybe rise up against them, kind of thing.
Yeah, partially. Yeah. Well, anyways, they kind of meet up, Cwagmire and her team. Like it's a group of like 4 people there. And like, hey, we know alchemy, and so we'll try to help you out. And so then it's kind of really getting into the game. And so originally, of course, it's gonna be still combat wise Fire Emblem. It's gonna be turn-based tactic like game. You have your Fire Emblem characters, and you go turn by turn. But now I want to kind of the battles. I'm not going to modify too much. It's really the hub world, because I think the hub world it's fine in the recent one, Engage. I think it's like it doesn't do anything special. 3 Houses was a little bit better with like kind of like trying to figure out which students to like you want to bond with, and has a little bit more side activities. I still think Fire Emblem Fates has one of the better
like you build the buildings yourself. You kind of have like this little hub and you customize it the way you want, and then you can have like online multiplayer battles where like the enemies come and invade your castle and stuff.
Exactly. So this is going to be like that. It's going to be more of, okay, now here's the resource management part of this game. You're going to go out into these battles, and then by the end of these battles, we're going to, you can walk throughout the world and gather materials. Very similar to how you do in Atelier games. You go out into the world and you gather materials, whether it be from a tree or from like the water or plants or whatever. You get all the different types of materials. You go back, and then Reese has her own hut, her own little Atelier place where she can build potions and then like enchant weapons and armor. That's the other big weak point I think of Fire Emblem, is the equipment handling. It's just fine. It's not like you kind of fit in a weapon and that's pretty much it, and then you kind of have to stick with that weapon until it breaks, or maybe it not breaks and it'll take forever to go to the next upgrade. It's like no. Each weapon and armor is going to be crafted by Reese herself. It's going to be special. It's going to have its own class. The way you do the alchemy, and I don't know if folks, in Atelier games, you have to like kind of map out certain things within like a puzzle, I would say, or like a grid, to kind of make a weapon. And then if you chain it correctly, you can upgrade it. And then it goes to the next level, like the next grid. And that next grid can have full of attributes going on. You can have fire damage, or you can have like a defense buff or something like that. That's how I would really like in a system for Fire Emblem, is creating these weapons and armor that I personalized and I've made specifically for these characters. So yeah.
But then like how many? Because like I imagine you're gonna have a lot of different soldiers. So like, are these going to be crafted for each individual character or for like individual character classes, or like how's that all going to work, Garret? Because I'm curious.
Well, I mean, you're going to have your swords and spears and bows, and I think you're going to do it individually. Yeah.
Okay.
What Atelier does really well these days is there's kind of this automatic type of like crafting, where it's like if you need to make like a quick item or whatever, like once you've done it once, you can quickly just press a button and do it again if you have the materials. Right. So like it'll be streamlined as you kind of get into the systems a bit more. But yeah, I really fully anticipate armors and weapons. It's kind of individual. If you really need to hook up a weapon for someone, you can still get like kind of a base weapon type of deal without any enchantments. That's fine. I think you can have off to the side. So yeah. And then other than that, of course, you'll have base building. And I think that I don't want to like lean on that too much. It's gonna be typical upgrades for all of your different types of functions and buildings. I don't want to get too crazy and detailed with that. It's mainly the hut, the Atelier hut. That's gonna be the prime jewel of actually going through this game and actually beating the soldiers there in these battles. So yeah, that's kind of like the main kind of plot so far. So what do you think?
Okay. I think that sounds pretty cool. Like, I like the ideas you have going on here. One of the reasons I wanted to avoid picking Fire Emblem for this particular exercise was because we already kind of have a Fire Emblem crossover with
That's true.
Tokyo Mirage Sessions. But I feel like you've separated it enough where it feels very different in feel, because Tokyo Mirage Sessions played much more like Shin Megami Tensei, whereas this plays much more like Fire Emblem. So I like where your head's at on this one, where you didn't go in the Atelier style, because then I think you'd be too close to something like Tokyo Mirage Sessions. So I like that you gave it like the Fire Emblem with the focus on this one, because you gotta have like when you come up with a crossover like this, you kind of have to pick one lane that the other one kind of conforms to a little bit, but you still bring unique elements from it. So I think you did a good job of like balancing this game, Garret, and coming up with some really interesting ideas. Because you're right, like I think a lot of Fire Emblem's weak points are, the weapon customization, or even just the equipment system itself. Because honestly, I don't really love the weapon breaking all the time, and then just the weapons not really feeling special. Like, you get weapons later in the game that have some kind of significance, but even then, like, I don't know, man, they're just not. They're not special in the same way that they are in other role-playing games. When you get like the ultimate weapon in even something like Star Ocean, because that's fresh in my mind, like getting the ultimate weapons in Star Ocean for each character was super awesome. Like, I loved going down that road. But even before that, before then, like every character had their individual weapons associated with those characters, and each one had like a description and visual style of like what that's supposed to look like. So which is, again, something that is very homogenous in Fire Emblem that you don't get a lot. So I think you're right to bring in something like Atelier that then fleshes that out a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And then so I have a few extra things I want to throw out there. There's like kind of sprinklings on top of this game. So I'm just going to go through a few bullet points here. So have a crafting based system. Also, the HUD can also make specific buff and debuff potions. I don't think it's very plain. It's very vanilla environment. You got antidotes and you got healing potions, and that's pretty much all you got. You really don't have too much in there. So I would like to have some speciality with those potions. And I think, I'm thinking this idea may not be so great, but just hear me out. Later in the game, you get enough resources. Let's say you invest in like a certain kind of, like, I would say engineering or something like that. You can build now bigger stuff to help you environmentally play in the battles, because this hidden nation, they have huge weapons, and they're, other than alchemy, they're pretty well sophisticated. And so they have not planes, but like floats. They got like, let's say, Gatling guns and like kind of like this like not exactly like a futuristic robot, but steampunk.
It's like steampunk.
Yeah. So you can have enough resources to finally implement your own type of of those type of siege weapons. I would say they're siege weapons. They don't go very far. They don't like kind of like go anywhere throughout the map, but they do help you, and they help you fight against what's on the other side majorly. So that's another thing I wanted to add in there.
Yeah. Now the siege weapons, you could even position them like the Fire Emblem bosses, where they have like multiple jewels of life that you have to like take down.
Yeah.
Like you could have a lot of fun with that, with the combat as well. Like build that into the combat in some way.
And then of course Riza can be recruited as a Fire Emblem character.
Okay.
Be its own character, an alchemist, have its own special abilities and effects. I think that would be kind of cool. Have her, let her have her own side missions and her side story within the game. That would be cool to have, of course. And then I think, hold on. Also, oh yeah, and then Riza can also have, let's say, you're upgrading, weapons and armors and potions. You have like kind of the skill system where like, okay, you can do some base weapons and armors and potions, and then if you invest enough, you could be pretty special in one place. Like, okay, now I can do like third or gold level tier weapons. Kind of like a skill leveling system going on with Riza. So. I think that's pretty much it, man.
Nice. So then question for you then, because you only mentioned that Reese is the only character. Like that's the only character you'd bring over from Atelier. Like you're having the cast be more like the Fire Emblem cast with her almost like an additional character.
Yeah, and I think her team can be part of the story. There's like 3 other or 4 other characters that are within.
Yeah, because you don't really have that many. Like Atelier games just aren't ensemble games, so it makes sense that you wouldn't have like a ton of characters or anything.
Yeah, I wouldn't flood the gates because I think Fire Emblem on its own and their characters are pretty special. There's some great relationships and great story writing. I don't want to mess with that. It's really just like, let's add in some of these characters from this other universe and kind of flare up the crafting base building mechanics of Fire Emblem. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Dude, that sounds awesome. I would play that game. If they came out with it tomorrow, I'd be like, yes, please. Give me that game all day long because I love Fire Emblem. I'm not over the moon with the gameplay in Atelier, but like fusing that world with Fire Emblem would get me way more into it, I think. So,
I think so too. And also Fire Emblem Engage, I forgot there's some involvement of Team Gust. With Fire Emblem.
Well, yeah, they did a lot of the visual design, like the character
visual
designs.
design,
yeah. So that like relationship's already there,
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Yeah, because that's a lot of stuff you kind of have to think about when combining these franchises too. Like, because I wanted to, of course, it's good to add like a sense of like, could this realistically happen in a way? But well, there you go, Garret. Well, I'm glad you made a Fire Emblem game, Garret, because we somehow made rival games. We didn't even talk about this ahead of time. We didn't talk about like what franchises or what style of RPGs we wanted, but it just so happens, Garret, that we happen to make our like rival strategy role-playing games. So here's my crossover. Are you ready for this? This is like,
I'm ready.
Probably one of the most Ryan Turford things in the entire world. Has nothing to do with Parasite Eve, by the way. That's a first. It's something everyone was probably expecting. but also like, what RPG franchise really does Parasite Eve really cross over? It'd be better to just wait for
Persona 3.
It'd just be better to wait for Resident Evil to finally dip their toes into RPGs to cross it over there. But
probably.
Garret, here is the title for my RPG pitch. And of course, I mentioned to Garret before we started the show, I have a 2.5-page dissertation design document planned for this particular game because I thought a lot about this one. The title is Tales of the Shining Force. Tales of the Shining Force. So the Tales series crossing over with the Shining Force series. And I know the Shining Force series is not around currently. They don't currently have a new game other than the mobile for Shining Force game, which I haven't played because it's Japan only at this point. But I feel like this would be the way we get Shining Force back, Garret, is they do a crossover like this with a very popular franchise with a studio that Sega has worked with before, because you had Shining Force characters and Tales characters in Project Cross Zone. So there is a little bit of an established motif here. So there is, like a repertoire for these studios kind of partnering together. And I think Bandai and Sega have partnered a bunch of things, in the past. So it wouldn't, surprise me to see, Sega and Bandai teaming up for a game of some kind. And not only that too, I see the motivations from both companies be like, well, Sega, for Sega to be like, well, here's our way to, get the Shining Force series back, especially because that Fire Emblem game is pretty popular. People like strategy role-playing games. Like, strategy role-playing games are on the rise. So this is maybe how we dip our toes back in, by working with like an IP that everyone in Japan knows. And Bandai Namco, the way that they look at it is, well, hey, the Tales series, we want to maybe branch out with the Tales series a little bit and try some different stuff with it. Like, maybe not have, like, you still have the mainline games, but maybe you want to do like a spin-off game with the Tales series, because they haven't done one of those in a long while. The last one we got was on the PSP with Tales of the World, which was like a like a more of a turn-based Tales role-playing game that crossed over all of the different Tales games together with like the protagonists from each one in those games. So, but it's been a very long time since they've done something like that. Like you've only really gotten the mainline standard style Tales games ever since then. So this would allow them to branch out a little bit. So the story synopsis, Garrett, for this one is that, first of all, this takes place in the Shining Force universe. Yes, it will involve characters from the Tales games, but but this will involve locations from the first 3 Shining Force games. So, of course, it takes place in a lot of locations you're probably familiar with, Garrett, from even playing Shining Force 1. So, one day, without warning, a third Jewel of Power appears on Grand's Island. Now, the Jewels of Power, Garrett, in case you don't know, they're from Shining Force 2, and they're kind of like the major component for summoning the villains in Shining Force 2 and releasing the seal from the big portal that is under Grand's island, essentially. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's why the main city in that series is called Grand Seal, because there is a big seal underneath the city that when these jewels are removed from their podium, it opens up this portal to another dimension. Cue in, this is of course is where the Tales characters come in, because when the jewel is stolen by a mysterious figure, it opens a dimensional gateway teleporting heroes and villains from the Tales universe to different parts of the Shining Force world. So Grand's, Paramecia, Cypress, and Rune. And of course, you'll be visiting all of these places throughout the course of your journey. The main villains for this game are actually going to be Volran from Tales of Arise, who was, of course, hellbent on revenge against Aulph, who's going to be one of the main heroes of the game. He teams up with Xeon, who is like the big demon entity from Shining Force 2. He's kind of like the big bad guy that organizes everything. And basically, they have a bunch of minions that are coming together, and they devise a big plan to take down the heroes of the land. So again, I went very, very like traditional crossover-y kind of story, like something that, just doesn't need to make a lot of sense, but no, you know what? It just works, and who cares is kind of the way I look at it. Because yes, like there'll be some great narrative beats, but I'm also like trying to with this game in particular, I wanted to make it feel like more of a traditional crossover game in a lot of ways.
Cool. I like it. I like it so far. Are we gonna get into what kind of combat is it?
Oh, you better believe it, because I've got a whole 1-page mechanics document to go over here. I'm not gonna go over the whole thing, but I love that I of course, like, because once I came up with this idea, Garrett, I just started writing.
You just went for it, man. That's awesome.
So, obviously, strategy role-playing game, similar to Fire Emblem, but the catch is, because the Tales series is an action RPG and not a turn-based role-playing game, I wanted to do away with the normal Shining Force grid system. So this game will no longer be on a grid like the traditional Shining Force games. Instead, each character, when they take their turns, because you'll still take turns in random order similar to Shining Force, but your characters will have like a free field of almost like a circle area that they can run around in the field on, similar to the Tales series, because the Tales series is very much known for that, where each battle you're going into like this small little battlefield, and then you're kind of running around the area and attacking the enemies. So while you're not doing that, because it's still going to be a turn-based game, I wanted to explore that idea with the the actual battle arenas themselves rather than the combat. So still gonna be turn-based, but you'll have areas of cover and things like that. So you have to, almost like a Mario and Rabbids kind of experience, where maybe the archers can't hit you from long range if you're hiding behind something, or maybe that you can't be targeted by wizards if you're hiding behind a barrel or something like that. Like, I wanted to incorporate some of those elements into this as well. Again, I've been playing a lot of tactics role-playing games lately, and that's just something I've actually appreciated more that games do now. Like, I like the grid style games, Garrett, but I'm starting to actually really appreciate the strategy role-playing games that go outside of that mold and do more of the XCOM thing. So that's something I wanted to inject into this a little bit and kind of modernize it over doing like a classic strategy role-playing game.
Cool.
Now the characters themselves are going to have individual abilities, and depending on what series they're from, they'll have a different set of abilities. For example, the Shining Force characters will have more of your normal style strategy role playing abilities that you have come to know. Like you'll have standard magic attacks, bows and arrows and things like that. Whereas the Tails characters, I wanted to make them feel different with the way you play them. So instead of having normal spells, your characters will have access to arts, which of course are the skills in the Tails series. But the way I wanted to make it feel like more like the Tails games is that the arts are slightly less powerful than the abilities that the Shining Force characters have. But the advantage you have for the Tails characters is you can use more than one art per turn if you use them.
Okay.
Or likewise, you might want to chain a standard attack and then an art together. So then you basically have 2 actions in a turn instead of 1. And then that adds like an extra level of strategy you can have on top of that. Because you could also, in theory, like move towards the target, use an art, and then maybe move behind cover. Whereas a Shining Force character might not be able to do the same thing. But obviously you'd have to balance the characters correctly. But again, I wanted to add some of that feel to it. Likewise, when you go into Garret, from playing Shining Force, you go in every time you initiate a battle, you go into that little thing where the camera kind of spins and you have like the 2 characters side by side, like the attacking character and the defending character.
Yeah.
I wanted to make it feel more like the Tales games, where in these little battle scenes, it won't just be one attack and then from you and then the enemy taking the hit and then it disappearing. I wanted to have like multiple attacks that happen during that little thing. So if you do an attack on an enemy, you attack the enemy multiple times, they'll take multiple points of damage. And likewise, if they counterattack, they deal multiple damage multiple times as well. Just to, again, give it more of that action-y kind of feel to it.
Is this still like more of just an animation within that, or is there?
Yeah, it's still an animation. Like you're not controlling it, but it plays out almost like an action scene from a Tales RPG.
Okay, cool. I like it.
Yeah, because you already kind of get a little bit of that in Shining Force anyway. So I'm just like nudging it a little bit more in that action feeling direction.
Cool.
Yeah. Now the characters, as they level up, Garret, because of course, if you remember from Shining Force, one of the important things in Shining Force is promotions, and you don't really have that in the Tales series. Well, I'm bringing promotions to the Tales series for the very first time. So of course, at level 20, because level 20 will be the character cap, and then you can promote to an extra class and then get an additional 20 levels. Of course, with the Shining Force characters, they're going to be pretty traditional. Because a lot of because we're going to be having heroes from across the Shining Force games that already exists, and they already have their promotions kind of mapped out a little bit. We can of course tweak them a little bit, but for the most part, they're going to feel very similar to what you kind of know for those characters. But obviously with the Tales characters, since this is the first time we're doing this with them, a lot of Tales characters throughout the game will have some kind of time jump or some kind of situation where the characters will kind of evolve a little, like they'll have a different kind of look or different skill set. And then that's how that'll tie into the promotions. Like Alphen, for example, like the maskless upgraded version of Alphen will be his kind of promotion versus the look he has at the start of Tales of Arise will be what the character starts as in this game. And going from there. Additionally, each character will have their own individual skill tree. I won't make it too complex because you're going to be recruiting a lot of characters in this game. But each character will have like a small skill tree. So then as you level up, you have some points that can fill in, and they'll kind of branch in like 3 different paths for each character. So you can really customize your characters to kind of fill your need in the party. Because you're not going to be short characters in this game, Garret, because there's going to be over 50 recruitable characters across both the Tales and the Shining Force series, including Bowie, Sarah, and Chester from Shining Force 2, Max, May, and Lo from Shining Force 1, Velvet Crow, Alphen and Shion from Tales of Arise, Lloyd Irving and Colette from Tales of Symphonia, Jude and Milia from Tales Exilia, and a whole lot more. Of course, there's going to be secret characters that you can only unlock by doing different things. You also will have secret promotions, Garret, where you can only promote to specific special classes if you find a specific item in a
Is it
side
sounding
quest.
like Suikoden? Just like all the characters and
Or this is
customization.
but this is also what Shining Force is like, because Shining
That's
Force
true.
2, because I know you haven't played it yet, Garrett. There's like
Mhm.
60 playable characters in Shining Force 2.
That's so much.
But you can't recruit everyone in one playthrough, and you can only bring like 20 of them into battle with you. So you're kind of forced to like pick and choose your favorites in a lot of ways. And then also, speaking of, how you're going to explore, like, you're going to explore this world in a similar style to actually the Tales games. I decided to go a little bit more open world exploration, where you'll kind of choose like a main character to kind of explore the world with, from a selection of characters, of the main characters to choose from. Of course, it doesn't really matter, because you can still get to all the different areas with them. But it'll be 3D environments that you're going to be traversing through. You're going to be traveling around the world of Shining Force in 3D for the first time. But you'll have larger story missions and smaller side quests appearing at different locations along the way, along your journey. And then, of course, you'll visit towns and other things like that along the way to kind of progress the story. But yeah, like it'll be like a 3D kind of cell shaded style, similar to the Tales games. Of course, Shining Force is no stranger to this either, because Shining Resonance Refrain, the newest Shining Force game, that game is cell shaded as well. So this is a direction they've already got in, and that's what all the Tales series does at this point. So it just kind of like perfectly meshes together. But that's kind of the gist of it. It's going to be a fun, turn-based role-playing game that mixes all my favorite elements of the Tales series with the Shining Force series together. And I think it's going to be a fun time had by all. What do you think, Garrett?
I like it. Yeah. Applause for me on the other end. There's a lot to unpack there. I would like to play this game, but I feel like I need to know, so much of the Tales series in the Shining Force series, just because it's a crossover and there's just so many characters from all of these games.
True.
But just the service level or whatever, I would be totally in for this, like, because I would totally play this type of game, just this kind of turn-based game that has some 3D action elements into there, and some action animations, and then going and exploring this world, and it's like a new story or whatever. I'm interested in the free, like no grid, type of combat, because they're they're few and far between. Like there's some good ones out there, there's some okay ones out there. But yeah, I'm interested how it would play out in this
like
type of
I
game.
would imagine the game that it's most similar to, the one that I imagine my mind's palace, Garrett, as you will. That's a Alan Wake 2 reference, by the way.
I love it.
Is something like Marvel's Midnight Suns is actually what I would probably closely equate it to a lot of ways, because that game also not grid based, but also a strategy role playing game similar to this kind of thing, and has a lot of melee attacks similar to this, because a lot of these games are mostly ranged based, like you're mostly using guns and stuff like that. Like Mario plus Rabbids is as an example. Like you have some melee stuff, but it's more strategic and not really your main method of attack in most ways. Whereas Marvel's Midnight Suns, like I think, is very similar to that, what I'm kind of pitching here.
Got it. And there's a lot of cover based type of stuff within this game, right?
Yeah. You have some things to hide behind. It's not like a central focus, but it's something like that becomes part of the strategy in certain missions in particular. Especially because like there are missions in like Shining Force CD that reminds me of this, where you actually have cover in certain areas, because there are you get like they introduce artillery in that game, Garrett, where the artillery can fire across the entire map, but only in a straight line, and if you're not behind the cover, you'll get hit. So like it's like bringing elements like that exist already in the Shining Force series kind of into this was my thought process.
Cool. I'm thinking of like when you go to like town to town, is there going to be like kind of side quest characters? Tales kind of does this, right? Like you kind of like go to a town and then you can talk to the characters in dialogue, and there could be some side quests. Possibly.
Yeah, I imagine like you're gonna have like some side quests for each, is like with some of the characters, like not every character in your party, mind you, because you're going to have a very large party in this game. But a lot of the central characters, like I would imagine, like Alphen or Velvet or Bowie kind of have their own side missions kind of thing, or Sarah. Like, I think that's more the type of thing I imagine with that.
And do you imagine, like, kind of like 4-ish or 5-ish characters walking around with you, or like, is it going to be like 20? Like with a shining force?
No, it'll probably be like I imagine that when you're doing the 3D exploration element, it'll be like the Tales series where you only see the one person, but the party is kind of in the menu, and they're still with you. They're just not on screen, which is why like you'd run into some of the members in town. Like it would make sense to do that because you're kind of exploring in that way. And it also reminds me a lot of Star Ocean, which I just played, where in that game when you enter a town, you can switch to private mode, which then has all the characters kind of do their own thing. And I imagine that being kind of the norm in this game, where you're playing like that with as if that mode's on all the time.
And do you imagine these battles being like having a lot of characters, or minimal, or kind of a mix?
Oh, we're throwing we're turning up the valve, Garrett. There's going to be you're going to have lots of characters in combat. You'll have I forgot to mention this earlier, but you'll have 8 members in your main party at once, but you'll have a backup party you can switch to just in case you need to strategize, like prepare for a different strategy mid battle rather than having to go out of the battle, change everything up, and then going back in a lot of ways. So that's kind of how I imagine it. So you'll have like 8 player battles and you'll have lots of enemies, but at the same time, the combat with the way I've designed it should go by fast enough that even though there will be lots of enemies, the battles won't be long. Again, similar to Midnight Suns, because Midnight Suns actually plays very similar to that as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I would try this out. I would try a demo. How about that?
Excellent. I sold you with definitely. A demo, at least.
Yes. I think the only thing that would hold me back to like pay money for this is just that it is a Tales and Shining Force series game. Yeah,
for sure.
And that's pretty much it.
No, I mean that's typical with a lot of crossover games too, where it is harder, like for the audience that doesn't know a ton about one of the series to hop in. Because the Tales series, it's one of those things where like I feel like I made the story open-ended enough where you don't have to play all the Tales games to hop into a game like this, because it is very much rooted in the Shining Force world. Of course, there will obviously be references for fans.
Yeah, references.
Definitely. It's not like you need to know. And likewise, it's not telling the story of Shining Force 2. You're just not going to have this nostalgia for the characters when you jump in if you haven't played those games before. It's like going to be its own original story, which is why I feel like it's still approachable for people who haven't played these games before. You just won't be as excited about it probably as someone who has played them. That's all.
I would like this.
Your Fire Emblem pitch as well, because like I feel very similarly about that, because it'd be like the 4th or 5th adventure with the Fire Emblem 3 Houses cast. But like if you didn't play any of them before, you're obviously it's probably not your game's probably not like super deep with introductions either, I would imagine.
Yeah. I was just imagining like a new line of characters or whatever. Yeah. But I think also I have a question for you about, other than this crossover game, I'm curious about, would it be realistic for Sega, tapping into the Shining Force franchise? There'd be a Shining Force remake. I wouldn't even say remake. I would say Shining Force, the game. Here it is. And it's, fresh and new. It has like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about with this Tales. And this is what really burst in my mind with this crossover game is like, other than the action stuff that you implemented from the Tales games, but just have the Shining Force, like cell shaded animation, have the, the tactical based, grid based combat or whatever, but like updated arts, updated skills, updated, conversations. Do you think that would be realistic from Sega to do?
I think it's realistic that they could do something like that. I mean, again, they tap into a little bit of the energy from Valkyria Chronicles, because you have some elements that are similar to, like, especially the free movement as an example. Like I really thought of Valkyria Chronicles when coming up with that idea too. So like I feel like they could do something like this even without the involvement of Ben and Namco. In fact, in a lot of ways, like I feel like, beyond, certain series that already exist in strategy role-playing games, I actually think like a lot of new players to strategy role-playing are probably going to go in more of this type of direction. Like we're seeing with Persona 5 Tactica as well. Like I think like a lot of newcomers to the strategy role-playing game genre are going to try more of this like non-grid style open approach to their battles. Like I think we're going to see this more and more as we see more companies try this kind of thing.
Cool. That sounds good.
Yeah. So
I think the one thing I'm a little weird about I'm still a little lukewarm about free movement, and I think the only thing about that is the way Valkyria Chronicles does it. I initially the way Valkyria Chronicles does is that once you move, you're running a gauge. Right. And that gauge, it doesn't matter where you've run to, you're running out of that gauge, wherever you move to. It's not like a fixed area around. It's like,
sometimes you're just stuck in the open.
Yeah, you're just stuck in the open. And so you're just like, crap, I have to figure this out, or this character's screwed. And then there's the other side, whereas what's that one vampire goth game?
Oh, Vampire the Masquerade?
No. It's the Japanese role-playing game that Kevin really liked, and we were both very lukewarm about it.
Oh,
Monarch, that's it. Yeah. So that one, that's what screams to me too, because that's free movement too, but it's a fixed circle, so you kind of can cheese your way, like kind of like moving behind cover and then kind of like crevicing between two objects or something like that. So anyways,
and I imagine it being, like I said, with something like this, I imagine it being more that style, because again, I think that's kind of starting to become the new hotness at this point, Garret, where like a lot of people are going towards that. And also I think it resonates more with people than the grid style combat, if I'm being honest, especially people that are newer to the genre. So we have to concede a little bit to new people, Garret.
I wonder if the new Fire Emblem game will be like that without a grid.
I think they're going to try one at some point. I don't know if the next mainline game will be that, but I could see them doing like a spin-off or some other. I think they'll try a Fire Emblem game that's like that in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I could see that too. Because when I even see it in Three Houses, I was like, wow, it's grid. That's kind of interesting. It's like, kids, you see the art style and you see the 3D, and it's just like, wow, that looks, kind of super free roam range. It's like, no, you're still a grid. I'm like, that's interesting to see. So
because I feel like Genealogy of the Holy War, when you get that remake, that'll be
that's grid.
That'll just be standard grid based. But I could see like the next game they do after that being free form, or even the game after that one. But I think this is a direction that more and more strategy role-playing games are kind of moving towards at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if NIS does this with the Disgaea games at some point too.
Yeah, that's true. I think Disgaea really holds on to like the different combos and grid-based like kind of systems going on, but I could see it too. Yeah.
Well, Garret, first of all, thank you so much for coming up with this amazing
I love it.
pitch. I love your idea, and I'm glad you liked mine. I'm glad we came up with two good games that people should go play.
Yes,
but they're definitely rivals, because you've got Nintendo on your end, and I've got Sega on my end. We're once again back in 1994 with the console wars all over again, Garret. Please be excited.
What Nintendo, what Sega does and what Nintendo don't. That's the
No. It's what Sega does, Nintendo don't care. We don't like Nintendo. We like Sega. Sega's better.
Oh, wait, is it the other way around?
It's the other way around, because that's a Sega slogan.
I'm dumb. There you go.
And it is time to move on to viewer inquiries, Garret, because we of course asked the community what their dream crossover games would be. So we got two quick ones from Nagachaka and Awesome David, and a question from Jarden. So first up, Nagachaka asks, which RPGs should have a crossover to make the ultimate husbando and waifu game, and why are they Persona 5, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and Final Fantasy 7 Remake? I don't know. I feel like Garret, you were on the right page with Fire Emblem because I think like there's plenty of husbandos and waifus in Fire Emblem.
100%. You know what? I would like just replace I would replace Xenoblade Chronicles 3 with Fire Emblem Fates, and then there you have it. That's the ultimate husbandos and waifus.
Yeah. Right there. Or I mean, if you're gonna include a Xenoblade Chronicles game, like honestly, there's way more husbandos and waifus in 2. Yeah, instead of 3.
Do 2. Yeah. 3 is fine though.
I like where your head's at, Nagachaka, because like I think that's probably the only way you could really do that, because there's not like I don't know about that. But next up we got Awesome Dave, who says a crossover between the Elder Scrolls and Warcraft would be interesting. They both have some pretty deep lore, and I just think these two franchises would be fun together. I actually like that idea too, because I like they're both medieval, fantasy franchises. It makes a lot of sense. You fight similar enemies.
They have similar races too.
Yeah. Like I think that'd be interesting. An interesting idea. Maybe they go through the black the black portal, but somehow instead of ending up in Outworld, they end up in Tamriel instead.
That would be cool. And then like you can do a Warcraft type of game. Yeah. With the Elder Scrolls universe. I would definitely try that out. Oh my gosh. Yeah. 100%.
Oh, speaking of, before we go to Yarden's question, Garret, you said you had an honorable mention. We forgot to mention.
I do.
We'll just talk about them very quickly.
Yeah. So here's my very quick honorable mention. I did Elder Scrolls Cross Elden Ring.
Okay.
And I don't know too much about Elden Ring, but I do know that it's from Software and its combat is just superior compared to any Bethesda RPGs. So that's why I wanted it. So of course the combat would be 100% Dark Souls, third person action oriented, bow, sword and staff. It would be kind of like this, Tamriel characters kind of tapped into the Elden Ring universe or whatever. I know they have a lot of different characters and build up with George R.R. Martin. I know there's a lot of different things happening. I read the plot a little bit. I still don't understand what's going on, but I think you can make a great story with that. Of course, with the Bethesda kind of typical tropes, you got persuasion, you got crafting, you got weapons and stuff like that. I want that in there. I don't want to be strict Dark Souls where you go to a freaking bonfire or whatever and you replace your souls. No, none of that crap.
Bringing the bonfires to Elder Scrolls. Excellent, Garret.
No. Actually, you could pause the game. Like, let's just, make this as approachable as we can, and add a lot of Bethesda great mechanics with the combat of Dark Souls and characters and environmental storytelling of Elden Ring. And I think you have yourself a good crossover right there.
I feel like I need to tell you, Garret, to just get good, because if you get good, you don't need the pause button. You just play and just keep playing. As for me, mine actually makes too much sense. And you mentioned this franchise earlier and how it wouldn't work, but I beg to differ. I picked Mass Effect and Star Ocean as crossover franchises, where the plot of the Star Ocean games, Garret, is always that there are characters from space that get marooned on a fantasy planet. So instead of having characters from space in the Star Ocean franchise getting marooned on an alien planet, it's the crew of the Normandy that get marooned on this alien fantasy planet, and Shepard and his plucky gang of characters, of course, are spread out across the planet. You eventually meet up with them. You start with Shepard, and of course you go to a local village and you meet up with some local inhabitants, and you team up with elf-like characters and dwarf-like characters and weird lizard men and people with this weird pointy thing that they're immortal beings who work at the circus, and you go and rescue the universe from the Reapers, I guess. So that was my other one, was actually Mass Effect and Star Ocean, because they're both sci-fi franchises, and it just makes it too much sense. I was like, this is too easy. I didn't want to write this one. That's why I didn't do the fully fleshed out version.
We can add a Starfield into that, and there you go.
Yeah. Oh my God, Mass Effect and Starfield actually would be a good one too.
That would be an interesting one. Yeah. So
yeah, the people in Starfield just find the mass relays, Garret, and they fly across the universe. That'd be interesting.
But I eventually want to talk about Starfield. I don't know. Yeah. I want you to play it, and I'm just wondering if I just need to like have someone to talk
I'm
to
just like,
about
man,
it.
I don't know if I really want to play that game until the maps come at this point, because I know they're coming.
I understand.
And I'm like, I kind of want to just wait, because I know I will regret if I don't just wait for it. But
I'm kind of getting in the heat of the story, and I just want to. I need a spoiler cast of some kind to just talk to someone about it, because it is really the best story out of all the Bethesda games by far. So
I keep hearing that from people.
Yeah.
But last question comes from Jarden, who asked the question: what RPGs are you two still going to get to and try and get to before the end of the year? Which I'm glad you brought up Starfield, Garrett, because we were talking about that a little bit.
Of course.
Starfield, again, like, I feel less optimistic that I'm going to play through it this year, because I don't feel like that the updates that I want with the maps and everything else is going to come before the end of the year. Like, I imagine that's like early next year. So
maybe
I feel like I'm probably going to end up waiting till next year for Starfield at this point.
It makes sense.
Again, I just finished Star Ocean. I've knocked that off my radar. I'm playing a game that I'll talk about in a week. We'll talk about it then. That'll be actually part of this list. We'll also, like, after that, then I'm maybe looking at Baldur's Gate is one I want to play before Game of the Year. I know I'm not going to finish it. There's no way in heck I can finish Baldur's
Are you going to get on PlayStation?
I mean, we'll talk about that later, but I think I may actually already be able to play it right now if I wanted to.
Okay, cool.
But I was waiting for the Xbox version, to your point, Garrett. That was the original plan. But now I may be able to play earlier if I want to. So I kind of want to play it before the Game of the Year talk, because even if I don't finish it, I want to at least know. I want to know what all these people are talking about with Baldur's Gate.
People are saying this is Game of the Year. I'm just like, oh gosh.
Well, that's because they haven't seen the gospel of Alan Wake 2 yet, Garrett.
And that's true.
We're gonna win these people over. Me and TPR and I are like the two people on board with the or Kevin Ainsworth. We're like the people on board with Alan Wake 2 at this point. Like, I'm ride or die for Alan Wake 2 at this point.
I loved Control. I love playing Control. I have not played Alan Wake 1 though, so I want to play Alan Wake 1 to play Alan Wake 2. Yeah.
And you should play it, because there are a lot of callbacks. Like, even though you could probably play it without playing Alan Wake 1, like, you'll be better off at playing the first one first. But Alan Wake 2 is way more like something like Resident Evil 2, which just, of course, has me excited for it. I love Alan
Wake 2. You got the first remastered out. There's some DLC if you want to try that out. It was for free on PS Plus, so I'm gonna play through that on PlayStation, I think, before my PS Plus membership runs out.
Other than that, the only other RPG I could see myself maybe playing this year is maybe Mario RPG, because I have it. Because we'll say I'll have it because I use my eShop vouchers on it. So I have it preloaded, and I'll be playing it, or I'll have it in a week and a half. But I don't know if I'll have time to get to it this year, because I also want to play Avatar in December. I'm actually pretty excited about that game.
That's just coming out of nowhere.
I mean, I actually really like Avatar, the movies, and
the movies
I like
are
Far
good.
Cry. I like Far Cry because this is basically just Avatar Far Cry, and I'm like, yes, please. I'm all about that idea. So
that sounds cool, actually. Yeah.
Like, I think that Avatar is going to be pretty good. So that's what I'm excited about. And then it's a bunch of other games, a bunch of cleanup from games I missed earlier in the year. So RoboCop Rogue City, Jedi Survivor, if I can find time for it. I'm playing through Spider-Man 2 right now as well, so I'll have that off the docket pretty soon. But that's it for RPGs, just Baldur's Gate, and that's it at this point, probably. And it's Mario RPG maybe. But what about you, Garrett?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait on Baldur's Gate 3 until like kind of the, I would say, definitive edition. They typically do that with Larian Studios. They kind of just have their first early release, kind of a full release, and then the definitive edition where they kind of just have all the DLC and then like the updates and everything. I think I'll just wait till that. It'll be pretty optimized. That'll probably be a year or a couple years from now. I'm not I don't know. I'm just not really motivated to jump on it as compared to others. For me, it's it's funny. I really want to finish, and I've gotten so close. I'm very, very close. Octopath Traveler 2.
Yeah.
I'm like 70 hours in. I'm like halfway through the last chapter of these characters. I know there's like a few things after that, but I'm getting pretty close to the end. I want to go back and finish it before the end of the year. Of course, November 16th and November 17th, I just tweeted out about this Persona 5 Tactica and Super Mario RPG. Which one am I gonna choose?
It's a mystery. Who knows?
It's probably Persona 5 Tactica, but that's besides the point. I think I'm also very excited for Mario RPG though, because I played Sea of Stars and I've really enjoyed the interaction of that, and it kind of and our Mario and Luigi talk kind of like, I was like, hey, let me kind of revisit the Mario and Luigi franchise on the 3DS, and I think they're fun. I think they're fun games to be had there. And I'm sure the Super Mario RPG is like kind of like the top notch, it's like the golden game of and where the inspiration came from. So I definitely want to play that. I don't think I'll finish it before the end of the year, but that's what's on the docket. Other than that, man, like I don't know. Valkyria Chronicles, I'll definitely finish it out.
Yeah.
I'm in chapter 10 right now, in middle of it, and so it's getting good. I'm a Starfield, of course. I don't think I may finish the story, but I definitely won't finish the game. That'll be a while. I think I want to at least do a new game plus of it and kind of go through it again, because I hear the new game plus is kind of crazy. And there's just so many systems to be had in there. Ah, gosh, I love it. From the base building, the ship combat in general, that's just 3 games right there. So yeah, Starfield is like a big one. I've been dabbling in Liza P a little bit. I want to play a little bit more and get warmed up to it. I really want to make a goal to like really like finish a Soulsborne game, whatever that is, like a Dark Souls, or I tried Bloodborne. I kind of fell off of it, and I think it's just the convenience of PlayStation, and like I don't have the PlayStation really in my room, or I really need like a handheld thing. So Liza P would be good. A Dark Souls remaster would be good, or an Elden Ring. So I think one of those 3, I think I'll go.
Although good luck trying to beat Elden Ring anytime soon, because that's like 100-hour game.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. That's why I said Liza P is probably the one, because it's like a 30-hour-ish experience, and I hear it's really good.
I also looked at Liza P too as well, Garrett, but it's just like they trying to fit it in with the other games I'm playing right now. I'm just like, I can't devote my time to it, because it's one of those things where with Souls-like games where it's just like I feel like I have to really focus on them in order to do well in them, or well enough not to get frustrated. So I can't really play it while also playing other stuff. So there just isn't the window for that at the moment for me personally.
I think I need to finish I gotta put Starfield to rest like for a good while in order to like really get into Liza P. But I'm just not quite done. I think I want to be done with the story and then some, because there's a lot of factions involved with Starfield before I really touch Liza P and get into it. Other than that, I think that's. I mean, I have a whole backlog of RPGs, of course,
and you'll get it assigned another role-playing game before the end of the year, assuming you finish Valkyria Chronicles this year.
Yeah,
so
yeah, definitely.
Although it'll probably be a shorter one, the next one, because it's. I've decided to go back to the old school RPGs. You're going to get. I told you before, you're getting a Sega CD one next. So,
great.
Which Sega CD role-playing game? You're surprised to find out.
Yeah. I'll finish Valkyria Chronicles. I think I would say in a couple weeks or so. I think my goal.
I definitely think you can finish it before the end of the year for sure. So,
but other than that, I mean, dude, Persona 3 Reload. I'm so ready for it.
4 months away. I tweeted about that tonight, Garrett. 4 more months before Persona 3 Reload. We got a new trailer for it today, and I'm just like,
it's 3.
I just need that game. Persona 3. Yeah. Well,
no, 3 months. You got 3 months. February.
That's even worse.
3 months.
I hate how time works, Garrett.
Yeah, we don't have much time left. And then you got Grand Blue Fantasy Relink
the same day. the same freaking day.
And then you got
also Suicide Squad killed the Justice Leagues the same day, Garrett.
Yeah. And then you got Rebirth later in the month.
Yeah. I mean, there's also speaking of this year, we've also got the Tales of Arise DLC coming out at the end of the week too. And I'm just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to play that at this point.
Dude, the Xenoblade 3 DLC just came and gone for me. I'm like, that happened. Okay, bye. Like, it's just wow.
Originally, I was also very excited for the Tomb Raider anniversary collection that comes out next February, because it comes out on Valentine's Day, and I'm just like, there's too many games in February for me to be that excited about it, because I don't know when I'll go back and play Tomb Raider 2 on Xbox.
Well, at least those don't take long though, right?
Oh, well, you'd be surprised actually.
Oh, really? Okay, never mind.
But I do really like them a lot. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Also, the same month, Garrett, we're also getting Arzette, the Jewel of Faramore. That, of course, is that
oh my goodness,
the Zelda CDI games, which I'm also like super excited about too. Final Fantasy Rebirth, Dark Forces Remastered. That's going to be a good one. Dark Forces, of course, the Star Wars
game,
from 1993. Very fun game. It's gonna be a busy year, Garrett.
This is gonna be another busy year.
January's no slouch either, because we got Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Tekken 8, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, another Code, and a bunch of other smaller games too. So.
And Dead Space just came out on Game Pass. I really want to go through that one, because I hear it's very special and
it's good.
Yeah. I want to get through that.
Anyways, I think that's gonna do it.
Thanks, Yarden.
This week's episode of the RPG Cave. But before we go, Garrett, plugs go. See, I enunciated plugs a lot more since people asked about what I'm actually saying when I say that. So
plugs.
Shout out to Bowsah.
Yeah. Follow me at Twitter/X @BlandExplosion. And then you can also find me on the Discord, Carpool Gaming. I'm very active in RPG Cave. I dabble around. I read messages. I can buzz your ear off on handheld based gaming and Steam Deck, and just find me on PC Gaming. I'm there for you. I'll recommend a video. I'll recommend emulation or whatever you want. I'll talk about that. So yeah, that's it.
Nice. As for me, you can find me on the old Twitter @Ryan Turf, and you also find us on Twitter @Carpool Gaming, right here, youtube.com/Carpool Gaming, and of course, podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turfer. This has been the 114th level of the RPG Cave, and we're out.
Bye-bye.